Are you ready to take your color mixing skills up a notch and get even closer to the rich, luminous hues that you admire in painters like Sargent, Sorolla, Zorn, or Cecilia Beau? If you have started using the exercise that I shared with you in last week's video and you want to push your color mastery even further, or just have one more fantastic color exercise in your skill building toolkit, this video is for you. Today, I will guide you through an even more thorough color mastery exercise that is the perfect next step in your journey. So by the end of this video, you will have a new tool to refine the beautiful colors that you want to bring into your oil paintings. If you're excited by this process and want more personalized guidance to create expressive painterly oil paintings, there is a link down in the description to book a free consult with me where we can create a tailored plan to help you achieve your painting goals. This is what I love doing. I love geeking out about helping artists to take their work to the next level. I love getting to live vicariously through you. So let's go ahead and dive into the exercise so that you can reach that next level. Last week, we dove into the, I would say, like step one version of this exercise. It is the simplest way for you to learn exactly how to reproduce the kind of color that you're drawn to. This week, we're going to be taking this to the next level. So last time, I showed you how this works with a very, very simple tool, hardware store paint chips. Now, today, we're going to be taking this further by actually matching the color directly on a reproduction of a master painting. And so to do this, you're going to need two things. One, you are going to need your reproduction of that painting. I got mine just printed off at Walgreens. It was really cheap. It was just a few bucks. And it took me no more than an hour to upload it and get the print and get back to the studio. And then the other important thing that you will need is one of these plastic page protectors. I got this at Walgreens the same time that I was there. And I think a whole pack of them cost me maybe $3. So first things first, I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to pop my reference into the page protector. Now, in a perfect world, I would probably have this so that the page protector and the painting would be exactly the same size. That being said, I did not plan that far in advance. And so there's going to be just a little bit of a gap, and this might move around slightly. So to mitigate that, I'm going to go ahead and tuck this all the way into a corner of this page protector. But don't worry, this is just an exercise to help you with your color mixing. This isn't about producing some final perfect work of art. That comes after we build up all of these skills. So I apologize that there is going to be just a little bit of glare on this. It's kind of hard to avoid with the screen protector, but making sure that your print is glossy and that your sheet protector is also glossy. It makes for very difficult filming for YouTube, but it makes for much more accurate color mixing and matching. So don't worry too much if you do see a little bit of glare on video. This will actually set you up for more success in person in your studio, however. One other thing is that just for ease of filming, I have everything down on my palette so you can see everything in one place. You will probably actually want to put this up on your easel. It's just going to be much easier. It'll also be a lot easier to control the light. Now, with all of this out of the way, let's go ahead and do just like really brief recap of last week's video. So in last week's video, I went ahead and I took these hardware store paint chips and I actually did an exercise where I mixed up color and then I matched it on the paint chip until the individual daubs of paint on the chip disappeared. And that is how I knew that I mixed exactly the correct color. I'm going to do the same thing today in this demo, but I'm going to be putting it directly on this sheet. The great thing about this is that you just need one sheet and you can simply wipe it off after you're done and reuse it countless times with all kinds of different references. It doesn't have to be a master reproduction like this Cecilia Beau print that I made. It can be a reference for an original painting you want to make. Sky's the limit. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick out an area of the painting where I really want to reproduce the color. And to make my job easier here, I actually have some of the paint that I mixed up from last week's video. And I can simply put it on my palette knife and I can hold it over the reference and I can just compare, like, does this look right? And in my case, while I know that you can see a shadow, even though that shadow is there, I can already tell this color is just too dark. But it is potentially a really good starting point. So to kick things off, I'm going to start with this little dab of color. I'm just going to go ahead and mix in some titanium white to lighten this up. And last time I had a little bit of cad lemon in this mixture. I think today I'm going to at least start by seeing what I can do with my yellow ochre. The yellow ochre is pretty dark in value compared to my target color here. So every time I mix it, my value is going to get just a little bit too dark. I'm going to have to readjust, but already I can tell I'm much closer. Not quite right. And unlike the paint chip exercise, I had a whole lot of real estate on those paint chips to put down marks and test to see whether it was actually the correct color. On this today, I have a little bit of a smaller print, so I'm just holding my palette knife up to the print and getting a little bit of a visual sense of whether or not it matches, and I'm making an adjustment if I don't think it's perfect. That being said, if it's easier, you can absolutely just put the mark down and wipe it clean. The only thing is that might result in a little bit of a mess if you aren't careful. So just something to keep in mind. So I'm noticing the lighter that I go, the harder it is to keep the color looking vibrant. This can be a downside of having to work with a lot of titanium white in a mixture. Sometimes as you go to the extremes in value, especially like really light values, it can be necessary to essentially compensate with a more powerful color for tinting. So I might be tempted to like pull out a cadmium here in a second, but I'm going to see how close I can get this without the cadmium. Yeah, the closer I get, the more I just keep looking at it and thinking, this just looks like a touch of cad lemon would give me exactly what I need. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to grab a touch of cad lemon and I'm going to bring it into this mixture. And so I hope you can see how this is really helpful even when you don't necessarily know what a particular artist's palette was. That being said, if you do happen to know what paints that painter happened to prefer and use most often, that is usually the best starting point for a palette. So here I've just gone ahead and I've put that little deposit onto my protector here. And it depends on the angle I'm looking from. I would say this is maybe just a hair light. It also looks like I can go a little bit more toward that yellow. So I'm going to see what happens again when I add just a touch of this cad lemon. I have to be really careful with the cadmiums because they're so powerful. And there, that next color that I put down looks like an ideal match. So next I'm going to take a look at this shadow color under the lapel. This is already going to be a tricky color, I can tell, because it is so neutral. Colors that just look gray or brown by default often can like really play tricks on our brain when we're color mixing. So I know it's in the family of this green that I mixed up last time. So I'm just going to start there. I'm going to add just a little bit of my transparent oxide brown and then maybe a touch of Viridian. My suspicion is that once I mix this, it's probably going to feel too dark, but let's just see. It's pretty close. Let's actually put down a little bit. Wow, okay. I think I need just a little bit more paint to see what I've done here. So there's just a little bit of sheen from the way this is sitting. I wonder if I can even that out for you all so you can see it just a little bit more clearly. So when I actually look at this with the camera more or less where my vantage point is, this actually disappears. There is a little bit of light reflecting off of the impasto on that mark, but if I were to turn this into like a master copy and actually use these mixtures for that copy, I would probably just go ahead and stick with what I have. And let's see, is there another area of this painting where I think the color would be particularly tricky? I think in my mind, I kind of go to a lot of these shadow shapes just because they are so neutral and so dark. I could see people kind of wondering about something like the shadow on the shirt cuff though. So I'm gonna quickly go ahead and do each of those. And again, if this is the kind of help you would like to get from me, specifically for the particular paintings that you want to make, we can always do a deep dive. I have free consultation calls to discuss your art goals and see if I could be a fit for helping you actually reach them. So if you do have specific areas of a painting where you're just feeling really stuck, I would encourage you to reach out and book a call with me. That's the perfect way to start getting more tailored help for exactly the kinds of problems you're looking to solve. But in the meantime, I hope this video helps to give you a sense of like a range of some of the colors that we might be mixing up here and how to go about doing that. Okay, so for that area, it looks like that mixture is just a little bit on the dark side. So let me take this and just see if it works for one of these darker areas. I'd say somewhere in between here is where this color actually wants to be. Yeah, so for the darker, I would just mix up a little bit of ultramarine. And for the lighter, I would probably introduce a little bit of this brown that I mixed up for the shadow under the lapel. So on camera, again, this looks a little bit dark from this angle, so let me go ahead and show you. There you can start to see how this is disappearing. Now, clearly it's not perfect, and if I just kind of shift this film around, it will look pretty different. Definitely you can see that based on this sheen, but I can even make it look like the opposite problem where the value is too light on those mixtures if I just get a little bit of glare on the paint marks themselves. So definitely hard to show you exactly what this looks like in person, but my hope is that this gives you a really solid understanding of how you could put this to use for yourself. And if you are not actually having to film this for YouTube, you should be able to get pretty darn close. And even if it's not 100% perfect, you should be much more accurate in those mixtures. All right, last up for today, let's go ahead and tackle this shirt sleeve. So I'm gonna tell you all right now, I have a little bit of an advantage in that I know my palette well. I've been mixing up color for a long time, and I have kind of an intuitive sense of how to maybe start with some of these tricky colors. Now that doesn't mean I don't get it wrong. I could find out right here that I get it wildly wrong. But I'm allowed to save some time on this just because right away I looked at this area and thought, I think Terra Rosa would be a good base for that, but it's not a really bright Terra Rosa. And typically the way that I like to neutralize Terra Rosa is with ultramarine. It creates a really beautiful like rosy purplish gray color. So in order to get this more accurate, I went ahead and just started with Terra Rosa, a little bit of ultramarine, and then I killed some of the intensity of the color. I tinted it a little bit with titanium white, and already you can see that this is pretty close. Now let me go ahead and just reposition my camera so you can see this maybe a little bit more accurately. You might get a little bit less of a view of my palette, but I think you'll be able to better see what I'm mixing. So again, the downside of filming this, there is just some general glare on this screen from this vantage point, but it's designed so you should be able to see this area more accurately. So when I do this comparison and I just visually overlay my mixture onto the reference, my immediate thought is, well, it just looks a little bit more brown. So the simplest thing I can do is actually just take some transparent oxide brown and work that into my mixture. Now, one additional advantage to this approach is it really gets you used to mixing up your color and actually checking it over your reference. This is a really underutilized tool across the board. I see it in my students, but I also just see it in artists in general. what winds up happening is that you kind of mix up a color and you go off of whether or not you think it's right versus actually checking it. And so this makes it it builds it into muscle memory. This exercise builds this activity into muscle memory for you, so you start doing it automatically, but you don't have to be working with paint chips or, doing a little color exercise with a master painting under a plastic sleeve to be able to use this to your advantage. You can put this in front of your still life setup. You can put it in front of a model when you're painting from life. All that's necessary is that your subject that you're checking the color on and your painting are lit in the same way. What this means is that it doesn't work on screens, because holding your palette knife up to a screen, the screen is a light source. The color on your palette knife will be in shadow when you hold it up. But if you are in a studio that is meant for painting, or you have your studio space set up to be pretty evenly lit, and you have the same kind of light on your model that you do on your palette, you should simply just be able to hold up your palette knife to the subject and tell whether you are actually accurate with your color. So already I can see this is much closer. It's interesting, I can see the little bit of warm just off the base of the knife, but I can see how it's getting a little bit cooler toward the tip, and this looks really close to me. So let's go ahead and put this down. So that's about what that looks like from my vantage point. Again, there's just a little bit of an impasto here that's picking up some glare, but when I disregard that glare, overall, the color looks pretty darn accurate. Again, you can see the same thing when I change this to look at the lapel. Same thing when I look at the opposite side of the suit that is more yellow. And these little dots of shadow here are really tricky because just of how this angle is. But yeah, if I take this just off to the side, you can see once again how those are blending right in. And there you have it. A very simple walkthrough of a very straightforward exercise that is going to help you to very quickly master your palette and really exercise those muscles for you to be able to see, identify, and reproduce the colors that you want in your paintings really quickly. This exercise might seem like a straightforward one, but remember, you can do this in so many different ways. You can do it whether you have a master painting that you're looking to reproduce. You can do it with one of your own references as a warm-up for something like a color study, or to check your color before you actually put it down on the canvas. Or even if you are working from life, you can use this approach and just have your color on your palette knife, hold it over the reference, and see if it disappears visually the way that we were going for here today. And you should find very quickly that your color transforms in your artwork and becomes more nuanced and is really dialed into exactly what you're wanting to produce. I hope this video has been genuinely helpful and continues to really help you to take your color mixing skills up a notch so that you can create the kind of oil paintings that you've been dreaming of making. If you want my kind of help in this process and you want that step-by-step support, I would love to hear from you. Make sure to check out the link in the description to reach out to me to see how I can help. And until next time, I hope you enjoy this exercise and get a lot out of it. Happy painting.